Day or Ash Wednesday or that sort of thing, the country would grind to a halt. But we seem to be unable to muster that much, is the word chutzpah? This is Skokie. We don't have that much chutzpah. For those of you who don't speak Yiddish, that means brazenness, I suppose, or nerve. But why should I bother you with my problems? We celebrate it on Sunday because we need to pay attention to it. It's an important feast. It's kind of a feast that, well, we don't really talk about much. Well, Jesus, you can't see him, so he must have ascended to heaven. I've heard people say it's a clever way to get out of the problem of where did Jesus go, but that is not true. In a sense, I think Holy Thursday is a Eucharistic feast. Because, a few months back I talked about how the temple was built on a threshing floor, a floor where grain was ground into wheat. It was threshed. The outer hull was taken off. And that threshing floor was completely hidden underneath the temple, the beauty that was the temple. And from the Mount of Olives, where Jesus traditionally ascended to heaven, there are people who discuss whether the scriptures say he ascended in Galilee or Mount of Olives, but if you look at this passage, this really doesn't mention Jesus ascending, the gospel passage, whereas the reading from Luke seems to indicate that he went to the Mount of Olives, but that's the traditional site. If Jesus ascended from the Mount of Olives, they were looking squarely at the temple. And Jesus said, I am with you all days till the end of the earth, and then he disappeared. In a sense, this is a Eucharistic feast because if Jesus is not present in the temple of the church, if Jesus is not present in the form of bread and wine in every tabernacle, well then he was just being sort of allegorical. But the wonder of it is that Jesus ascended not only into heaven, but he ascended into all space and time. He ascended to be in this building today. He, as if it were telescoped himself through time to be at 8148 North Karlov this Sunday morning under the form of bread and wine. So the fulfillment of the Ascension promise is the Blessed Sacrament. Looking at this, I think we need to kind of take a fine-tooth comb to the readings today because the Ascension, well, that's where Jesus ascended to heaven. It's a lot more than that. It's a lot more than that. First of all, the Great Commission. Go forth and make all nations my disciples. That's an amazing, amazing thing. You see, Jesus would have been speaking Aramaic and a little bit of Hebrew to his disciples. And the word disciple, this is a very important thing. I wish we'd translate the Bible into English someday. The word disciple means students. It means a particular type of student. But it was the word for student. And these readings are full of that word. The 11 students went to Galilee. And Jesus approached and said to them, go therefore and make students of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. This is the Great Commission. Jesus didn't tell us to make church members of people, though that's a fine thing. He didn't tell us to make better human beings of everyone. He told us to make students of all nations. He told his students to go out and make other students. Now, as I'm always pointing out, we live in Skokie. Right up Karlov, there is a Chabad center, the ultra-Orthodox Hasidim. They're the guys with the curls and the hats. You ever seen these guys? You get these guys who are maybe 14, 15, 16, who are going to a yeshiva, which is Jewish higher education. And they are crazed. I suppose you don't get much chance to meet them, but I've had, down at the synagogue in Uptown, I've had some, I'll never forget one, let me look at my watch. This could be long. Forgive me. I remember one Feast of Purim, which is sort of Hebrew Halloween. They all dress up in costumes. I went down to the synagogue, and it's one of the feasts that you can travel. You can drive a car. And so the rabbi had invited a lot of Talmidim, a lot of these Talmud students. And they were 14, 15. The oldest was probably 19. And I walked in with my little yarmulke and my Roman collar, and they thought it was a great costume. They wear costumes on Purim. And they thought it was a great costume, and the rabbi's sons are just laughing. They think this is great. And they finally come and say, no, he's a Catholic priest. He says, no, he's not. I says, yes, he is. Prove it. So I pulled out my driver's license, and I had my picture taken with a little piece of plastic. It used to get you out of tickets. Now it'll get you a ticket. Things have changed. But I figure I wore the collar when it was a benefit. Now I got to wear it when it isn't. But they said, one of the students said, I could get one of those made. And of course, immediately, as soon as they were convinced I was a priest, they started asking me what I thought about Mel Gibson's movie. Oy. But these guys were kind of frenzied. They love to dance, and it's much more like aerobics than dancing, Hasidic dancing. Very intense, and they're called Talmidim, and they're students. But they aren't just students as we think of students. You go to school, you come home, you forget to do your assignment. No, you moved in with the rabbi. There's a saying that you should be so involved with your rabbi, so close to your rabbi, that you were covered with your rabbi's dust. And you became your rabbi. We see in the gospel that Peter, or rather James and John, asked Jesus, where do you live? Which is an odd thing to ask a teacher. But that meant they wanted to sign up to live with him. You went and lived with your rabbi. So it was a very intense thing and a very personal thing. It was a fervor for the truth. I asked Rabbi Lefkowitz once if there was any place that was Orthodox where a Gentile could study Talmud. Now, the Talmud is a collection of oral traditions and the commentary on the oral traditions. It's a very complex book. Well, it's a whole library. And Rabbi Lefkowitz looked at me and said, no, there's not really any place you could study Talmud. And I said, there isn't, no. No, they wouldn't teach you Talmud. And I said, why not? So you're a Gentile. It would be a waste of their time. It would be a waste of your time. Well, how do you like that? It would be a waste of their time. It would be a waste of my time to teach me Talmud. All right. Now, you live in Skokie, right? Many of you, most of you. You know that the word goy is not complimentary, is it? You know, the word goy, if a Jew calls you, stupid goy, means a Gentile, someone from the nations. We're the goyim. We're the nations. We're the non-Jews. And we're not capable of learning Talmud. And we can go to heaven if we follow the basic covenants but we're not capable of learning Talmud. We can't become students. We can't become Talmidim. So Jesus says to his disciples, go and make Talmidim of all the goyim, make students of all the Gentiles. This is the last thing he says to them. And they would have said, what? What? Make students of all the Gentiles? Why?